Hi everyone, this video is for those people that love Graphic 45, for those people that love making cards, for those people that love making the most out of their stash and are looking for ideas. This tutorial's for you. And you can see here that I've had a good old tidy up of all of my Graphic 45 papers, and it's quite a substantial collection, and that's without adding any of the new ones that have recently come out. So I wanted to make the most of my leftovers, and leftovers make lovely cards, and I hope you think that this is lovely. So I'm going to show you how I made it and perhaps give you some ideas at looking at the leftovers that you've got in your collection. So we're starting out with this collection here, and this is an oldie but a goodie steampunk debutante collection, and the only pieces that I've got left are two sheets of pop-outs or cut-aparts or embellishments. I don't know what you call them, but they're the bits and pieces that Graphic 45 give you to add a little bit of something extra to the papers, to make pockets out of, to use the frames, all sorts of different things that you can do. Make tags. Always remember to look on the back, and that point is something that's particularly relevant to Graphic 45 papers. They're always lovely on both sides, and it was when I turned this one over that I saw this gorgeous rose print, and I thought I would really like to use that, but I don't have any of the papers in the collection other than these two, so I'm going to show you how to think outside the box and make the most of what you've got left. So I'm going to use this paper on the background of my card, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, because I didn't have any other papers to go with what I was going to work with, I needed to look into my collection, and I found these two papers, both in the Couture collection, that I'm going to use pieces of to make me able to make a card. So rather than use the plain cardstock, which you could quite easily do, I really like to mix and match the patterns, and that's the beauty of Graphic 45. Collection after collection, when you get down to those last little pieces, don't forget you can mix and match the papers and they work beautifully together. So I've made myself a card base out of black cardstock. It measures 8 inches by 8 inches, and I've scored and folded it in half at 4 inches. The next thing that I'm going to do is cover the front and the inside with this paper from the Couture collection. So throughout this tutorial, I'm not going to give you all the names of papers that I'm using, just going to talk in collections, because it's all about just making you have a look at what you've got. You could easily make this card in other papers that you've got in your collection. Look at your sort of papers that have tags and cut-aparts and decide which one of those you're going to use as your feature. Have a look at your papers to see which one mixes and matches with that to create your background, and then you look for your accent pieces, which is exactly what I'm doing here. So I'm cutting two pieces of card that measure 4 by 8 inches, and I'm going to stick them to the front and the back of my card blank. As usual, I'll be using glue to add my pieces to my card. You can use double-sided tape if you want to. Now, I always find that it's probably a little bit easier if you want complete coverage and no extra card showing, just to cut your dimensions of your paper a little bit bigger than your card base, and then you can do exactly what I'm doing here. Line up your ruler with the edge of your card and trim away any excess, and that way you get perfect coverage. When you add the inside piece, just remember to avoid that little fold line that you've got. Just come slightly to the right of it, and that way you won't push your covering card across once you fold your card. It won't impact on the fold in the centre. Now, because Graphic 45 paper actually has a white core, sometimes when you're using dark papers like this, if you don't want that white edge, because I've got a dark card as well, then I'm just using some Distress ink to ink that edge and get rid of the white core that's revealed once you cut into the papers. Okay, so how am I going to use this piece of paper without it falling apart? I don't want all these pieces to come away, even though it's been in my collection a long time and they've stayed where they have been for quite some time. I'm just going to be doubly sure by adding this tape to the back to make sure these pieces stay in place once I cut this and start treating it as a piece of cardstock. So I'm going to cut it 3/8 of an inch smaller than the original card. So I'm going to cut it, I'm just working it out here, the best way to cut this without losing all the other pieces and elements on this sheet. So I'm cutting it 3/16 shorter than the original measurement to give myself a nice fine border. So I'm coming in 3/16 from the original 4/8 measurement. I'm going to ink the edges once more. You can see that I can now use this piece as if it were a piece of card, making sure I've got plenty of glue because of the tape that I use, quite shiny, and then attaching that to the card. No one would ever know that it wasn't a piece of full cardstock, or cardstock without bits cut into it. Now I'm removing the frame that naturally comes on this little piece because I just need to give myself room to be able to mount this without it getting too big for the card. The reason that I took the border that was already on the print off altogether was because I wanted to repeat with a fine black border to bring it into the design of the card. Now you imagine you've picked a similar piece from a different collection. What you will be thinking of now is, what colours am I going to use to accent the papers that I've chosen, the elements that I've chosen, and just give it that contrast, and you can see how nice that looks. And because I want the turquoise in the middle of this frame, I'm also just cutting slightly bigger than the original aperture, or smaller. I think it's smaller. You can see what I mean here, to give myself a black frame on the inside. So this piece is going to be the piece that frames the greeting on the card. So just checking the measurements so I can cut this piece slightly smaller than the original so it sits neatly behind that aperture. And whilst I'm at it, I'm also going to use this on the inside of the card. So again, I'm going to cut this 3/16 shorter than the original. So that is, the original was 4/6, so on the inside of the card. So I'm just going 3/16 shorter on both measurements. And that will be where the greeting is stamped on the inside and where you can sign the card when you actually send it. Now I'm looking for some embellishments in what I've got left. I've got this little butterfly strip, and I think that would sit nicely here. I've got another little version which might enable me to repeat some of that design on the inside of the card, and I suddenly realised I've got matching little tags. Now first of all, I thought of using this one, just a little bit not quite cut through, so I'm just using my craft knife to get this out. There we go. And I wanted a second tag, and I had this one. Originally I was going to use the picture on the front, but you can see what happens as I go along. So I've picked some elements that go with what I've already got from this little cut apart sheet. So this is half the fun of making cards with Graphic 45. There's always so much that you can cut from original printed sheets that you can use as actual design elements on your cards or creations. You can see of the way I'm thinking, but I need a little bit more decoration on the inside. And as I've got no more strips left on my cut apart, I'm going to make some strips of my own, remembering that the back of this paper is the rose design that I've used on the front. I'm cutting a strip to allow me to make some decoration on the inside. If I'd have had more butterfly strips, I would have used those, but I haven't, so I'm going to use a little bit of the black card and the rose card to create some stripes. So just checking, I was just checking there to see how much of this paper that I've got left to make sure that I'm going to be able to mount all of the elements that I want to put onto my card. So I'm starting out by just adding a little border strip, and that's where this kind of ruler comes in very handy. If you haven't got a gridded see-through ruler, it really is worth investing in. Mine's by Tim Holtz, but there are others out there, and you can use that to make sure that everything that you cut is either parallel or at right angles by using the grid on the ruler. Another thing that Graphic 45 is famous for is lots of fussy cutting, and I'm cutting out these teeny tiny butterflies to add to my card. Unfortunately, on the main strip I couldn't make it positioned so that I could get another whole butterfly out of it. You can see I get a little idea a bit further on when I want a couple of extra butterflies. So I've got 3 teeny tiny butterflies, I've got my little tags, and I've decided that I'm also going to mount those. And it was there where I turned it over and I thought, it matches completely the 2 papers that I've chosen. The 2 papers that I've chosen are actually sort of slightly larger versions of a very similar print. So one's got large roses, one's got teeny tiny roses, and so I'm going to use that rather than the lady image that's on the other side of the tag. So mounting the strips again that are going to go on the inside of the card with the black. You can see how we're bringing together the inside of the card to match the outside, and that's always a gorgeous finish on a card that you're going to give to anyone. So again, everything is being mounted and I'm carefully fussy cutting around the tag. And it will just lift and separate because I'm using the same patterns. It will make the tags stand out against the background. You'll still get that gorgeous tag shape and the interest of the extra elements, but they will stand out because of the framing with the black card. I've looked through my stamps and I'm just drawing around the aperture on the card that's going to carry the greeting, and I'm stamping in a Versamark ink, and I've decided that this card is going to be a thank you card to a friend, and I'm using a black detail powder by Cosmic Shimmer and then heat setting that, and it should sit nicely behind that aperture. So this is the Nature Sentiments stamps from Creative Expressions, and I'm using the thank you on the front, and then on the inside it says you are a treasured friend. So a lovely way to let your friend know that you appreciate them. So we're ready to put this card together. So again, I'm attaching everything with glue. I probably should have stuck those strips on first because now I'm going to have to, I could have just trimmed them off either edge. Now I'm going to have to be careful to cut them to the right length. So getting a little bit ahead of myself. This is where I realised I should have done it the other way around. But just be a little bit careful. I'm using the stripes to make sure that I can line these up perfectly. And you can just see how this little tiny extra detail really do give the inside a lovely finish to match all the trouble that you're going to make the card beautiful on the front. Anyone receiving cards like this will appreciate that they look lovely inside and out. So just again working out where to cut this embellishment strip. This time I'm going to stick it on with foam tape, and I really must invest in better foam tape because this is it's really sticky and it's a pain in the butt. My scissors always need cleaning afterwards. Look at the state of them. I tried to keep one pair for cutting this tape. It works well once it's stuck on, but it's a pain to cut into. It's too sticky. So now I'm ready to put these two elements together. So as I fiddle about trying to get this ribbon to sit in the right place on this card and be nice and firm, I suddenly remembered a trick and I'm going to pass that on to you now. So if you try to tie something around a piece of card like this, it's not a very solid piece of card at the moment and it's easy to bend, so it's difficult to get the ribbon to sit taut on the piece. So I'll show you what I'm going to do about that. I'm just having a little bit of a thought about what I'm going to use where at the moment. I've got some of my Graphic 45 staples. I've got a little button that I'm going to use and it's going to sit in the centre of the ribbon. So let's try that again. I'm going to tie the bow roughly where I want it and to the size that I want it. And I'm concentrating really on getting a nice bow to start with. Then I'm going to cut this apart at the back. I'm going to add my piece of double-sided tape which will hold it in place. This is a strong double-sided tape. I always like to use that with ribbon if I can. And then I'm going to position the bow slightly to one side, and now I can just overlap these pieces of ribbon at the back and everything's nice and taut, and I haven't had to take an absolute age to get it to sit in the right place. So back to the double-sided tape, and I've got my hot glue gun on. You could use silicone glue if you want to, but I find that for the metal embellishments on a card, it's quick and easy to use your hot glue gun. If they're a bit more lightweight, you could perhaps use glossy accents as well if you want to. So I've added more of that gorgeous sticky tape which wants to stick on my fingers, wants to stick on my scissors, and eventually it sticks on the card. And then I'm just going to line that up. I'm going to trim that little bit off the top because I wanted it in a slightly different position to where I'd stamped it, and then it's on with the glue and onto the front of the card, and it's starting to look really fabulous now. You can see how gorgeously we can mix and match all of our leftover papers to create beautiful cards, and it really is a fun way to spend an afternoon. I needed a couple more butterflies. This is from, I think, the old Curiosity Shop collection, and I just found a couple of extra blue butterflies that go in with my card design, and I'm just attaching those with a little bit of hot glue as I've got that on my desk ready to attach the button. And I'm going to sit this one here, and last but not least I'm going to push the button into the middle of the ribbon, and then because of the weight of the button I'm also going to glue the knot of the bow to the card. And how's that for using up your leftovers? So just to recap, look what you can do with your leftovers. Leftovers make lovely cards. It's just about having a little think and a play, mixing and matching the elements that you've got left. Don't forget to make the inside look as lovely as the outside. Just simplify your design slightly and you will find it a lovely finish to a gorgeous card. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial and I've given you lots to think about. I've used 3 paper collections, little bits and pieces from each to bring them together to make a gorgeous Graphic 45 card. I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, the share button, the like button. As usual, thank you for watching. So if you love Graphic 45, why not check out my Graphic 45 playlist by clicking on the iCard above, or check out my YouTube channel and find it there. Lots of ideas for using up your Graphic 45 gorgeous papers, including a tour of this piece that I made for a Graphic 45 audition a few years ago now. I didn't get through, but I will keep trying, and you'll find lots of Graphic 45 goodness on this playlist.